The planet was silent when the human patrol arrived. Wind swept across the barren plains, carrying the dust of old battles. Broken walls of stone rose from the ground like teeth of some giant beast. It was here that Darren, a young soldier, walked with his rifle at his side. His boots crunched over cracked soil, but no living creature stirred around him. The ruins had been marked on the star maps as dangerous. Long ago, this world had belonged to an alien empire now fallen into shadow. Most explorers avoided it, yet human command wanted answers. Strange signals had been detected beneath the surface, and Darren had been chosen to investigate with a small group. He was not alone. At his side walked Myra, a historian from one of the allied alien clans. She was smaller than him, with pale blue skin and large thoughtful eyes. Where Darren's hand rested on his weapon, Myra's hand hovered near a tablet of knowledge, always ready to record what she saw. "This place is cursed," Myra whispered, her voice barely rising above the wind. Darren glanced at her but did not answer at first. He was trained to trust evidence, not whispers. Still, he could not deny the heavy feeling pressing on him as they moved deeper into the ruins. The air itself seemed to carry memory, as though unseen eyes watched them. The group reached a wide stone arch half buried in the sand. Symbols were carved across it, weathered by time yet still glowing faintly. Myra bent closer to study the shapes. "These are warnings," she said slowly. "Not in my clan's tongue, but older. It says the chamber holds what must never be awakened." Her words made the other soldiers uneasy. One of them muttered that they should leave, but Darren felt something pulling him forward. He shone his light into the opening. A staircase led downward into darkness. Commanding Officer Wren gave a short order. "Darren, Myra, you take point. We will follow." The group descended carefully, their footsteps echoing in the stone passage. The air grew cooler with every step, carrying the scent of age and dust. Darren's lamp revealed walls carved with thousands of lines, each mark precise and purposeful. Myra whispered translations under her breath, though many symbols were too ancient for her to understand. At last, the stairway ended at a vast iron door. It stood half open, as though waiting for them. Beyond it stretched a chamber so large that their lights barely touched the far wall. When Darren stepped inside, his breath caught. Skulls filled the chamber. They rested on stone shelves rising up the walls, row after row, glowing faintly with pale light. Each skull was carved with markings that shimmered like fireflies in the dark. The soldiers froze. Even the bravest among them looked uneasy. Myra's face had gone pale, and she clutched her tablet tightly. "This is no tomb," she said in a trembling voice. "It is a vault. Each skull is marked with memory script. These belonged to warriors of old. Their last thoughts were carved into bone." Darren moved closer to one of the shelves. The skull before him was not human. Its shape was long, with ridges running across the crown. Yet the way it glowed made it feel almost alive. He reached out but stopped an inch away, his fingers trembling. Myra pulled him back sharply. "Do not touch it." Legends say the Chamber of Skulls was sealed to keep the past from spilling into the present. To disturb them is to invite disaster. Her words echoed across the chamber, but Darren only stared harder at the skulls. Something about them stirred inside him. It was not fear. It was something else: curiosity, perhaps even duty. If these skulls held the last memories of fallen warriors, then maybe they held secrets too. Secrets humanity needed. The silence of the chamber pressed down on them. The faint glow from the skulls cast long shadows across the floor. It felt as if the warriors themselves were watching, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. One of the soldiers shifted nervously. "We should report this and leave. This place should stay buried." Darren did not answer right away. He took a slow breath and turned in a circle, looking at the thousands of skulls surrounding them. Each one represented a story, a life, a battle fought long before humans ever walked among the stars. "Maybe this chamber isn't only a warning," he said at last, his voice low but steady. "Maybe it's a message left for whoever comes next." Myra shook her head, but her eyes showed a flicker of doubt. She wanted to believe it was only a curse, yet even she could not deny the power in the air. As the group stood there, a faint hum rose from the walls. It was soft at first, like distant music, but soon it filled the chamber. The glow of the skulls brightened slightly, as if responding to the presence of the humans. Darren tightened his grip on his weapon, but deep down he felt no threat. Instead, he felt the pull grow stronger, as though the chamber itself wanted to share its secrets. For the first time in his life, he wondered if the past was not truly gone. Perhaps it waited, hidden in the silence, ready for someone to uncover it. And now, standing among 1,000 glowing skulls, Darren knew he had stepped into something far greater than a simple mission. The chamber was alive with memory, and it had chosen to awaken. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum that filled the air. The glow of the skulls washed over the walls, turning every shadow into a shape that seemed alive. Darren stood still, feeling the pull of the place grow stronger. He wanted to know more, but the fear in the eyes of his team reminded him they were not meant to linger. Myra broke the silence. Her voice trembled, yet carried weight. "I know this story. My people tell it to children, but never as truth. It was said to be only a tale. But now I see the tale was real." Darren turned toward her. "What story?" Myra held her tablet close, her eyes scanning the glowing marks carved into the skulls. "Long ago, before humans traveled the stars, a great enemy came. It spread across systems, burning worlds until nothing remained. Armies rose to stop it, but one by one they fell. These skulls belong to the last warriors who stood against that darkness." The soldiers shifted uneasily, their boots scraping against the stone floor. One of them, Joran, muttered under his breath. "So this chamber is a graveyard." Myra shook her head. "Not only a graveyard. It is also a record. The warriors carved their final memories into bone. They wanted the future to know what happened." Her words sent a chill through the group. Darren studied the nearest skull, noticing how the markings curved like rivers across its surface. He imagined the warrior who once bore it, facing an unstoppable enemy, carving a message with the last of his strength. "Why here?" Darren asked. "Why build such a chamber?" Myra's eyes lifted toward the shelves that stretched upward into the shadows. "Because they wanted to leave behind a warning. Or perhaps, a guide." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. To them, warnings were enough reason to retreat. But Darren felt something different. He had seen ruins before, walked through cities turned to dust, yet never had he felt such presence. This place was not silent, it was waiting. Rin, the commanding officer, stepped forward. His voice was sharp. "We will not stay longer than we must. Myra, record your findings. Darren, stay sharp. We will send the data to command." Myra obeyed, her fingers moving across her tablet as she copied symbols. But Darren's eyes never left the shelves of glowing skulls. He felt as if each one carried a voice just beyond his reach. As they prepared to leave, Myra's voice rose again, soft but clear. There is more to the legend. It is said that the enemy was never destroyed. It was only delayed. The warriors gave their lives to buy time. They believed the stars would one day face the same threat again. The chamber grew colder at her words. The soldiers looked at one another nervously, but Darren felt a fire burn in his chest. If that legend was true, then humanity stood in danger as well. He walked closer to the shelves, ignoring Myra's sharp intake of breath. His lamp fell on a skull larger than the rest, its carvings more detailed, almost alive. He could not read the marks, but they seemed to pull his gaze like a magnet. Darren, Myra called, her tone warning. Do not go closer. But he did. He stopped only when he was inches away. The glow of the skull reflected in his eyes, and for a moment he swore he saw movement in the marks, as though light flowed through them like blood. He whispered, maybe they wanted us to find this. Maybe this is why the chamber was left behind. Myra shook her head quickly. Or maybe they wanted no one to disturb it again. You must not touch. The legend says contact awakens what sleeps. Her words pressed on Darren's mind, but his curiosity was stronger. He reached out, his hand trembling above the glowing bone, then stopped himself. Something inside him held him back, though not from fear. He wanted to wait, to understand more before acting. Behind him, Ren gave an order. We have seen enough. Fall back. Reluctantly, Darren pulled his hand away and turned. Myra let out a breath of relief, though her eyes stayed on him, as if she feared he might return to the shelf. The group left the chamber and began climbing the long staircase. The air grew warmer as they rose, but Darren felt as if he had left part of himself behind. The hum of the chamber still rang faintly in his ears. When they reached the surface, night had fallen across the ruins. Stars filled the sky, sharp and cold. The soldiers set up camp while Myra sat apart, her eyes on her notes. Darren joined her, settling onto the broken stone beside her. You believe the legend, he said. Myra did not look at him. I believe what I saw. And what I saw was real. The chamber is older than any of our records. Those skulls hold truth, and truth is heavy. Darren leaned back, staring up at the stars. If the enemy is still out there, hiding, waiting to return, then those skulls may be the only guide we have. Myra finally turned her gaze toward him, her expression unreadable. Or they may be the very key that brings the enemy back. Her words lingered in the air. Darren did not answer, but deep in his heart he knew this was only the beginning. The chamber had not been silent. It had spoken to him, not in words, but in feeling. And he could not walk away. That night, as the wind howled through the ruins, Darren lay awake with one thought echoing in his mind: the chamber was waiting, and he was not done with it. The camp was quiet through the night, but Darren did not rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faint glow of the skulls and heard the low hum that seemed to follow him from the chamber. When the first light of dawn touched the ruins, he rose before the others. Myra sat nearby, her eyes red from lack of sleep. She had been writing through the night, her tablet filled with symbols copied from the chamber walls. When Darren approached, she looked up sharply. You are thinking of going back, she said. It was not a question. Darren gave a small nod. I have to. That place holds answers. We cannot just walk away. Myra shook her head, her voice soft but firm. The legends were clear. Touching the skulls will awaken the past. Do you understand what that means? Some doors are not meant to be opened. He held her gaze. And what if those doors were left for us to open? What if the warriors wanted someone to learn from them? Before Myra could answer, Rin called the group to move out. Command had ordered them to continue scanning the ruins, but Darren's thoughts never left the chamber. Every step he took away from it felt wrong, as if he were abandoning something that called only to him. By midday, when the patrol reached a ridge overlooking the silent plains, Darren made his choice. He slipped away, moving back toward the ruins while the others searched in another direction. The staircase was just as he remembered, steep and silent, leading into cool darkness. He carried a small light, but the glow of the skulls guided him even before he reached the chamber. The air grew heavy again, filled with that faint hum. When he stepped inside, the sight stole his breath a second time. Thousands of skulls glowed faintly in the shadows, waiting. He walked toward the same shelf that had caught his attention before. The large skull with intricate carvings seemed to pulse with quiet energy. His hand hovered over it once more. "Forgive me," he whispered, though he was not sure to whom he spoke. Then he touched it. At once, his vision blurred. The cold chamber vanished, replaced by a sky filled with fire. He stood on a battlefield not his own, where alien soldiers charged across broken ground. Their armor gleamed with strange symbols, and their weapons burned with light. Above, dark ships blotted out the stars, raining destruction upon the land. Darren staggered, clutching his head, but the vision pulled him deeper. He felt the fear of the warriors, the weight of hopeless odds. He heard their voices shouting in a tongue he could not understand, yet somehow he knew their meaning: commands, cries, last words of courage. He turned and saw one warrior fall, carving a mark into his own skull with trembling hands before death claimed him. The memory burned into the bone, waiting for someone to see it. Waiting for him. The ground shook as enemy machines advanced, towering giants of steel and fire. Darren felt the desperation of the defenders, the will to fight even when defeat was certain. The sky split with explosions, and then the vision shifted again. He stood in a great hall, where leaders of many worlds argued. Some wanted to flee, others wanted to fight. Voices rose, fear and anger clashing. In the end, the warriors chose to stay, to build the chamber as a warning, as a record. They knew they would not survive, but they wanted their story to live. The vision broke. Darren stumbled back, gasping, his hands slipping from the skull. The chamber returned around him, silent but alive. Sweat ran down his face, and his heart pounded like a drum. Myra's voice rang behind him. "You touched it?" He turned to see her standing at the doorway, her eyes wide with shock. She must have followed him when he left camp. "I saw them," Darren whispered. "I saw their last stand. I felt what they felt. The chamber holds their memories, Myra. They built it so someone could learn." Myra's face was pale, but she stepped closer, her voice low. "And what else did you see?" Darren hesitated. He remembered the towering machines, the dark ships, the endless fire. He remembered the feeling of the enemy pressing forward like a tide that could not be stopped. "They fought something vast," he said. "Something that destroyed worlds. They delayed it, but they did not defeat it." Myra's hands trembled around her tablet. Then the legend was true. The enemy is not gone. It sleeps. Darren nodded slowly. "And if it wakes, humanity will face it too." The two of them stood in the chamber, surrounded by the silent glow of the skulls. The hum in the air felt louder now, as if the chamber itself approved that its secret had been revealed. Myra looked at Darren with fear and wonder. You should not have touched it. But perhaps it chose you. Darren did not know what to say. He only knew one thing for certain. The chamber was not finished with him. The echoes of the past had found him, and now he carried them inside his mind. As they left the chamber together, Darren glanced back one last time. The skulls glowed softly, as though watching him depart. He felt the weight of their memory pressing on his shoulders. And he understood he was no longer just a soldier. He was a witness to a war that had never truly ended. The journey back to camp was silent. Darren walked beside Myra, his mind heavy with the visions. Every step echoed with images of fire, ships, and warriors who refused to surrender. He wanted to tell the others, but he knew they would not understand. To them, he would sound like a man touched by madness. When they reached the surface, Rin was waiting. The officer's sharp eyes noticed their absence at once. "Where were you?" Before Darren could speak, Myra stepped forward. "I followed him back to the chamber." He touched one of the skulls. The camp grew tense. The soldiers muttered to each other, fear spreading like smoke. Rin's face hardened. "You did what?" Darren met his gaze, steady but tired. "I saw what the warriors left behind. The skulls hold memories, visions of the war they fought. It is real. They built the chamber so someone could learn." Rin's jaw tightened. "Or they built it to contain something that should stay buried." Even as they argued, a faint sound rose in the air. It was low at first, like distant thunder, but soon every soldier felt it. The ground vibrated under their boots. Myra's head turned sharply toward the ruins, her eyes wide. "It is the chamber," she whispered. "It has awakened." The soldiers scrambled to their posts, scanning the horizon, but no enemy appeared. Instead, the vibration grew stronger. From the heart of the ruins, a faint pulse of light shot into the sky, vanishing into the stars. Rin cursed under his breath. "You have triggered something." Myra shook her head, fear tightening her voice. "Not just something. The chamber has sent a signal. We do not know where it went." That night, Command contacted them through comms. The message was cold and clear: destroy the chamber before the signal spreads further. The soldiers looked at Darren as if he were to blame. He stood apart, staring at the dark outline of the ruins against the night sky. His thoughts returned again and again to the warrior's sacrifice. Destroying the chamber felt wrong. It was not only stone and bone. It was memory, hope, and warning. Myra sat beside him quietly. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Darren broke the silence. "They fought so that someone might remember. If we destroy this place, we throw away what they gave us." Myra's voice was soft, but firm. "And if the signal brings back the enemy?" Darren looked at the stars. "Then we will need their knowledge even more." The next morning, arguments spread through the camp. Some soldiers agreed with Rin, saying they should plant charges and bury the ruins forever. Others, uneasy but uncertain, listened to Darren, who spoke of the visions he had seen. Myra stood between them, torn by fear and truth. When the sun rose high, the ruins answered for them. The hum from the chamber grew louder until the very air seemed to vibrate. Lights shimmered across the carvings, and the pulse of energy shot into the sky again, stronger this time. The comm crackled with an urgent message from orbiting ships. Unidentified signals are spreading across the sector. Alien allies have detected them too. They demand immediate action. By evening, a group of alien leaders arrived on the surface. Their ships landed near the ruins, sleek and silver against the sand. The leaders stepped out with grim faces, their voices heavy with fear. "This place is cursed," one said. "It should have stayed buried. You humans have disturbed what should never be touched." Darren stood before them, unflinching. "You fear it because you do not understand it? But I saw what it holds. The chamber is not a curse. It is a message. The enemy they fought was not destroyed. If it returns, we will need this knowledge." The alien leader's eyes narrowed. "Or perhaps your touch has already called the enemy back." The tension in the air thickened. Soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons. Myra stepped forward quickly, her voice calm but urgent. "Wait. I studied the carvings. The chamber was built to awaken when touched. It was not an accident. It was designed to respond. Whoever entered was meant to see." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. Some whispered in their own tongue, shaking their heads. Fear was strong in their eyes, but so was doubt. That night, Darren returned once more to the edge of the ruins. He stood alone, watching the faint glow rising from the chamber entrance. The air pulsed as though the chamber itself breathed. Myra found him there. "They will decide tomorrow," she said. "Some want to destroy it. Others want to seal it and leave. Few believe in using it." Darren looked at her. "And what do you believe?" Her eyes searched his face. "I believe the chamber chose you. I do not know why. But if it did, then perhaps it is not meant to be destroyed." For a long moment, they stood together in silence. Above them, the stars glittered cold and distant. Somewhere beyond those stars, Darren knew, the enemy might already be stirring. The chamber pulsed again, and the glow touched their faces. Darren clenched his fists. He could feel the weight of the warrior's memory pressing on him, urging him forward. He whispered, almost to himself, "If the enemy is coming, then I will not run. I will listen to what the past has to say." And deep in the ruins, the chamber seemed to answer. The hum grew louder, filling the night like a heartbeat. The debate among the leaders stretched long into the night. Some argued for destruction, others for sealing the chamber forever. Darren listened in silence, his thoughts far from the meeting. He could not forget the visions he had seen. The voices of the fallen warriors still echoed in his mind. They were not curses. They were memories, cries for someone to understand. When the leaders finally ended the meeting without agreement, the camp fell into uneasy rest. Darren lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling of his tent. The chamber called to him, louder than ever. He knew he could not ignore it. At dawn, while the camp still slept, he slipped away once more. His footsteps carried him back through the broken ruins, down the familiar staircase, and into the silent glow of the chamber. The hum greeted him like an old companion. He stood before the same skull as before, its carvings bright with faint light. His hand hovered over it, then settled firmly. This time, the vision came faster. He was thrown into the memory of a warrior, standing on the deck of a great starship. Around him, fleets burned, their hulls torn apart by dark enemy fire. Orders were shouted, ships formed lines, but one by one they fell. The warrior's thoughts filled Darren's mind. "We must hold the line. Even if it breaks us, we must hold. Someone must remember." Tears stung Darren's eyes as he felt the warrior's last breath, the sharp pain of defeat, and the deep hope that one day another would learn. The vision shifted. Now Darren stood in a vast cavern much like the chamber itself. Warriors gathered, speaking in solemn tones. They knew their end was near. They spoke not of escape but of legacy. They carved their memories into bone, line by line, until their strength failed. One voice rose above the others. If the darkness returns, let the next stand stronger than we did. Let them carry not only their own courage but ours as well. The vision faded, and Darren fell to his knees in the chamber. His chest heaved, his hands trembling, but his heart blazed with new fire. He was not only seeing. He was learning. The chamber was teaching him tactics, strategies, the desperate wisdom of warriors who had fought an impossible war. "You came back," Myra's voice said from behind. Darren turned, startled, to see her standing in the doorway again. She had followed him once more, her expression torn between fear and curiosity. "I had to," Darren said, rising to his feet. "They are not only memories. They are guides. They left their knowledge for someone to carry." Myra stepped closer, her eyes on the glowing skulls. "And why you? Why would an ancient chamber choose a human soldier from a distant world?" Darren shook his head. "I do not know. Maybe because I listened. Maybe because I believed they still had something to say." Myra hesitated, then touched one of the shelves lightly, though not a skull itself. Her voice softened. "All my life, I thought the story was only a tale to frighten children. But you make me think it was always waiting for someone like you." The hum of the chamber grew louder, as if in agreement. The glow of the skulls brightened, washing the walls in pale light. Darren felt a strange warmth inside him, not of fear but of connection. Together, they moved deeper into the chamber, exploring shelves they had not dared to approach before. Some skulls glowed brighter than others, as if their memories were stronger. Darren touched another, and another vision poured into him. This time he saw the enemy clearly, shadows wrapped in steel, towering machines with eyes of fire. They consumed everything, their fleets endless. Yet he also saw how the warriors fought, how they adapted, how they used unity to strike where the enemy was weakest. When he pulled away, he gasped for air. Myra steadied him with her hand, her eyes wide. "What did you see?" "They were not hopeless," Darren said, his voice steady despite his trembling. "They fought with courage. They found ways to resist. They wanted us to know that the enemy can bleed. It can be delayed. Maybe even defeated." Myra's eyes glistened. For the first time, there was no fear in them, only belief. Then the chamber truly is a gift. The two of them stood together, surrounded by 1,000 silent witnesses. Darren felt as though the warriors were not only teaching him, but trusting him. The chamber was not just memory. It was a promise carried across time. As they left, the hum followed them up the stairs, softer now, almost gentle. Outside, the camp was stirring. The alien leaders still argued, their voices sharp and divided. But Darren carried something new inside him, knowledge, and the courage of those who had come before. When Rin confronted him angrily, demanding to know where he had been, Darren stood tall. "The chamber is not our enemy. It is our ally. And if the darkness returns, we will need its wisdom to stand." His words carried weight, not just to Myra but to a few others who had begun to doubt their fear. For the first time, hope glimmered among the unease. That night, as the stars shone cold above, Darren knew his path was set. The chamber had tested him, and he had answered. He was no longer only a soldier. He was the bridge between the past and the future, the one chosen to carry the voices of 1,000 fallen warriors. And deep within the ruins, the skulls glowed brighter than ever, as if they too believed. The alien leaders gathered at dawn, their sleek ships gleaming under the pale light of the sun. Tension hung over the ruins like a heavy fog. Darren stood with Myra, watching as voices rose and fell in heated debate. "We cannot stay," one alien commander said. "The signals from the chamber are dangerous. We should leave this planet and seal it. Let the humans deal with their own choices." Another shook his head. "The chamber holds knowledge. If the enemy returns, it could guide those who know how to use it. Leaving now is cowardice." Darren stepped forward, his boots crunching on the dry soil. "You speak as though the enemy is already here," he said. "But what we face is not yet upon us. The chamber is not a curse. It is a gift. The warriors left us guidance, not fear." Myra's voice joined his. "I have studied the carvings. They were created to teach, to prepare. We have the chance to learn before it is too late." The alien leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Some muttered in their own tongue, worried and skeptical. Fear had been their first response, but now doubt crept into their minds. Ren's face was grim. "And what do you propose, soldier?" "That we all risk everything because some stories say the enemy might return." Darren met his gaze without flinching. "If we run now, we betray the warriors who fought and died for the stars. We betray ourselves. Humanity is stronger than we realize. We can stand together with your help or without it, but we must not give up before the fight even begins." The argument stretched through the day. Alien ships roared with engines as some prepared to depart. Others hesitated, waiting to see if Darren's words held truth. Myra stayed close to him, recording every symbol in the chamber, every memory he had received. Together, they studied the knowledge the warriors had left, trying to understand the strategies and tactics encoded in bone and light. At sunset, a decision was made. A portion of the alien fleet would leave to maintain their safety. The remaining few, skeptical but unwilling to abandon the chamber completely, stayed behind. They would watch, but their trust was fragile. Darren felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The chamber had chosen him, but he knew he could not carry its knowledge alone. He began to share what he had learned with the soldiers and the alien allies who remained. Each lesson was cautious, each strategy carefully explained. They practiced maneuvers, formations, and methods of defense based on the visions he had seen. Myra guided him, translating the carvings, explaining patterns he could not fully interpret on his own. Together, they built a training ground near the ruins. Soldiers moved in lines, tested their equipment, and learned to work as one unit. The glowing skulls above seemed to watch them, silent teachers in the shadows. Darren discovered that some strategies were not only physical but also mental. The warriors had known that fear could destroy hope faster than weapons could destroy walls. He taught his men to remain calm under pressure, to trust in one another, and to think beyond the immediate danger. Night came, and the wind swept across the barren plains once more. Darren stood outside the ruins with Myra, looking at the stars. Somewhere beyond them, the enemy waited. The signals from the chamber had reached far into space, and Darren knew it was only a matter of time before something answered. "We are not ready," Myra said softly, her gaze tracing the glow of the chamber below them. Darren shook his head. "We will never be fully ready. But we have something most do not: the knowledge of those who faced impossible odds and survived in spirit. That is our advantage. That is why we stand." Myra reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I hope the others understand that too." Darren nodded. "Some will understand. Some may never trust it. But I cannot wait for everyone to be ready. We have to start now. He returned to the training ground as the soldiers drilled under the fading light. Their movements were slow at first, unsure and cautious. But Darren guided them, showing how the ancient tactics could be adapted to modern technology. Gradually, their confidence grew. They began to move as one, understanding that courage was not the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it. Myra watched from the edge of the ground, recording everything. She felt hope stir within her. For the first time, she believed that the chamber had not only chosen Darren, but that humanity could rise to the challenge. Darren paused, looking at the horizon. The sun had dipped behind jagged mountains, and the shadows stretched long across the ruins. The chamber pulsed faintly beneath the ground, as if acknowledging his efforts. The memory of the warriors flowed into him like a river, steady and powerful. He whispered quietly, more to himself than anyone else, "We will not fail. We will honor them." And far above, in the vast darkness of space, a signal pulsed in response to the chamber. Somewhere, the enemy stirred. But for now, humanity was learning, preparing, and standing strong. The choice had been made. They would fight, not in fear, but with courage and knowledge. The chamber had awakened, and with it, a new hope. The horizon glowed red long before the enemy arrived. Darren stood at the edge of the training ground, watching the first ships emerge from the darkness of space. They were massive, unlike anything he had seen before, with hulls black and sharp like jagged stone. The alien leaders who had stayed behind murmured in fear, but Darren felt calm. The knowledge from the chamber had prepared him for this moment. "Soldiers," he called, his voice firm, carrying across the ground. "The time has come. Remember what you learned. Stand together, trust each other, and do not give in to fear. The chamber gave us guidance. It is our strength now." The troops straightened, gripping their weapons. The humans and alien allies who remained side by side, ready to follow every instruction. Myra stayed close to Darren, her tablet in hand, recording every movement, every strategy as it unfolded. The first wave of enemy ships landed. Machines taller than buildings marched across the plains, their weapons glowing red. The ground shook with every step, dust rising in clouds. Darren moved among his soldiers, shouting orders learned from the chamber. Each formation, each maneuver had been practiced many times. Now it was time to see if it could hold. The first clash was violent. Enemy machines struck with overwhelming power, but Darren's forces were ready. They moved with coordination, trapping enemy units in ambushes inspired by the ancient warriors' tactics. Missiles fired from hidden positions, lights flashed across the plains, and explosions tore through the enemy lines. Despite the chaos, Darren remained calm. He felt the presence of the fallen warriors guiding him, whispering strategies through memory and instinct. Every movement he made was a reflection of their courage. Soldiers followed him with precision, understanding that this was more than survival, it was honor. Myra watched in awe as the battle unfolded. The ancient strategies worked. The humans and aliens fought as one, countering attacks with knowledge that no modern army could have invented alone. Each skull in the chamber had left lessons, and now those lessons were alive in the field. The enemy adapted quickly. Dark machines formed new lines, shifting tactics like a living organism. Darren adjusted his commands, teaching his soldiers to respond, to think beyond the immediate threat. He realized that courage and intelligence together could outmatch even the most terrifying force. Hours passed in a blur of sound and movement. The sky was streaked with smoke, explosions marking each victory and each loss. Soldiers fell, but their positions were held by others who remembered their training. The enemy roared and pressed forward, but Darren's forces held the ground, striking in places they never expected, always one step ahead. At the center of the battlefield, Darren saw the largest enemy unit. Its size was monstrous, and its movements were precise. He gathered a small team, guiding them to flank the machine. Using a tactic inspired by the chamber's visions, they lured it into a trap. Explosions surrounded it, and for a moment, it seemed unstoppable. But the teamwork, strategy, and courage of humans and aliens combined shattered its defenses. Victory came slowly but surely. The enemy, though vast, could not overcome the unity and knowledge of those who stood against it. By nightfall, the remaining machines retreated, disappearing into the darkness of space. The plains were quiet again, the only sound the wind sweeping through the ruined land. Darren fell to his knees, exhausted but alive. Myra came to him, her eyes shining. "You did it," she said softly. "We all did it. The chamber's knowledge guided us, and we survived." Darren looked at the distant ruins, remembering the glowing skulls. "Not just survived," he said. "We honored them. Every tactic, every choice came from their courage. They fought for this moment, even though they were long gone." Myra nodded. "And you listened. That is why the chamber chose you." The soldiers gathered around, tired but triumphant. They looked to Darren for leadership, but also for understanding of what they had learned. He spoke to them, his voice steady and filled with gratitude. "Remember this day. Remember that we faced what seemed impossible. We learned from the past, trusted each other, and we stood together. That is how we survive." That night, as the stars returned to their quiet positions above the plains, Darren returned to the chamber. The skulls glowed faintly, softer now, like guardians watching over him. He knelt before them, placing a hand gently on the largest one. "I promise," he whispered, "I will not forget your sacrifice. I will not let your knowledge be lost again. Humanity will carry it forward, and we will be ready for whatever comes next." The hum of the chamber filled the air, almost as if in response. Darren felt warmth spread through him, a quiet affirmation. The warriors had trusted him, and he had honored that trust. Myra stepped beside him, placing her hand over his. "The story does not end here," she said. "We will remember, we will teach, and we will stand ready." Darren looked at her and smiled, a rare light breaking through the exhaustion. "Yes. This is only the beginning. The chamber will guide us, but our courage and our choices will write the future." Above them, the stars shone, and far in space, the remnants of the enemy faded into silence. Humanity had faced the test, and it had survived. Not because of luck, not because of strength alone, but because it dared to learn from those who came before, and because it stood united. The chamber of 1,000 skulls had awakened, and in doing so, it had passed its legacy to the living. Darren rose, knowing that the promise he made that day would carry forward across generations. The past had spoken, humanity had listened, and now the future was theirs to protect.